Now let's talk about survival knife. What does that really mean? And what's that concept even look like? And for everyone is different. Many people would say it's whatever knife you have on you in a survival situation. And so there's definitely some truth to that. And for me, in a perfect world, I would have, say, about a 5-inch pretty compact knife like the original Nomad, a compact hatchet, and a good folding saw. All this is gonna take up quite a bit of space in a pack and weigh about 4 pounds. So to me, a midweight survival knife is a blade that is sized that in a pinch, it could process split wood similarly to a compact hatchet, be able to handle about the same diameter, and be able to delimb or fall similar sized trees. Now, of course, it's gonna take more energy with a knife than a saw or an axe would, but it's really, is it set up to handle swinging and impact and be able to span wide enough logs that, say, that hatchet could split in half as well? And could it do that if it had to in a pinch? Of course, each individual tool will do better, and I'm gonna compromise maybe some carving capability because it's slightly larger and more cumbersome than that more compact blade. So there are trade-offs, but that's the idea for me of a mid-weight survival knife is, could you, if necessary, just take this one item. You're not planning on building a fire or a shelter, but if you had to, you could bust this out and get the task done using more energy, using more time, but be able to accomplish similar tasks to all three of those items individually could do quicker and more efficiently. Now that we've got the what out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at some of those features to look for and steer away from in a survival knife. But before we go any further in the video, I want to give a quick shout out to today's sponsor, which is Hardside Hydration. Hardside Hydration, with their Swig rig system and other water bottle accessories, gives us all the convenience of a water bottle hose attached to a bladder, but gives us the strength and versatility of it being attached to your favorite rigid water bottle. With this system being attached to my water bottle on the exterior of my bag, it frees up internal space for more of my equipment and gear. It's less prone to leaks, and if there are any issues, it's on the exterior of the bag instead of all of my interior gear getting soaked. And when I get to my destination, I can easily just disconnect it and go back to using it as a dedicated water bottle. It has now become one of my favorite pieces of kit. And I'm thankful to you, the viewers, for recommending this brand to me over a year ago. I did not even know it existed. One of you suggested it, went over there, began to test it out across the country, now use it regularly. And just knowing that this is designed by a small business founded right here in America, and that they are creating solutions for problems that you and I, the outdoor user, often have. And so guys, I will have a link in the description below over to Hardside Hydration, as well as my exclusive 10% off promo code that will go towards your purchase. So go ahead and check out all that they have to offer. This Mora companion is an excellent blade, but it is light and pretty compact, and I'm not gonna be splitting much wood or chopping down much trees, and it's gonna be pretty difficult for me to do larger fire prep or shelter building with this tool alone. And so for me, the bare minimum blade length would be 5 inches. This Becker BK2 is like 5.1, 5.2 inches, if I remember correctly, in blade length. And this would be about the shortest blade that I would feel comfortable being able to span enough wood to split like a hatchet would, and be able to have some of the other attributes we're about to hit on at minimum. And oftentimes I would prefer it to be even a little bit larger, and where something that's about 7 inches, like this Lionsteel M7, is just about perfect. It's gonna have plenty of blade length to be able to span larger pieces of wood and split up if I have to, and that extra blade length is gonna give me more surface area to impact wood, do different cutting techniques, as well as giving it a little bit more weight, usually up front, meaning more inertia impacting the wood, so that my chops are gonna take away more wood and more material with each swing, which therefore means I'm burning less calories and having to exert myself less. Now, there are obviously exceptions to every rule and variations in between that 5-inch to even up to a 12-inch or even larger if you want to. And there is a saying that a big knife can do what a little knife can do, but a little knife can never do what a big knife can do. And there's absolutely truth in that statement. Now that you have a good understanding of the blade length, what about blade thickness? This BK2 is 1/4 of an inch thick, meaning it's a short, stubby, heavy, thick tank. That means that it's very tough, very durable, and it's gonna get a lot of work done for how compact it is, but that 1/4 inch thickness on a saber grind means that it's not gonna be the finest, most precise cutting tool out there. It's more of a bludgeon, it's more of a sledgehammer than it is a scalpel. So you have to consider, how are you planning on using this? Do you want some finesse in the tool? For me, I've found that unless the grind is really well executed, usually it's best, in my opinion, to go with something that's about 3/16 of an inch thick for a survival knife. Because if we go with a very thin blade, but say it's long, like 7 inches, we're going to lose often lateral strength as well as weight behind the swing. And we are wanting it in this scenario to replace or at least compete with a small hatchet. And so something that is that thin is gonna have a difficult time splitting up wood, and when you're swinging, it's just not gonna take out the amount of chunks that you would hope with each swing, meaning you're gonna have to do a lot more and exert yourself a lot more because there just isn't that much material on the blade to impact that wood and give you that weight that you want. And since we're on the topic of weight, how heavy should a survival knife be? Now, this knife right here, an A&V P300, hits a lot of points that I'm looking at in a survival knife, and even some things on the handle I'm about to hit with you in a moment. But this is 0.2, so it's not quite 1/4 inch thick, it's just over 3/16. It's like 5.1, 5.2 inches long of blade length. There are a lot of other good attributes, but this is about 9 ounces, and there just isn't that much weight with each swing impacting that wood, and I'm just gonna fatigue myself. And so this wouldn't be my first choice in a survival knife. It goes great in that pair with a saw and an axe, but I would prefer, and what I've found works best for me, is a minimum of about 12 ounces for a survival knife, and then right around a pound, maybe like 17, 18 ounces max. Then it starts to get kind of heavy and cumbersome and fatiguing to use, and it almost makes more sense to just go with a lightweight knife like this and bring a saw along as well and rely on both of those tools. And then it basically cascades in the fact to just bring all 3 tools. And so that's really the sweet spot for me, is 12 to 17, let's say, ounces is ideal for that one tool option. And since we're all knife lovers here, the one tool idea is a joke. I've never gone into the outdoors with just one knife on me. I've always had a minimum, like a pocket knife, or sometimes we have 3 or 4 different tools, but the idea, again, of maybe a pocket knife and just this, or something like that, going into that idea. Now, we've been looking at the blade a lot. What about the handle? Because the handle is just as, if not more so, a point of importance and a point of failure if you're not careful in your choice of materials and design. Now, of course, we all recognize this profile of the Ka-Bar fighting knife, been in production in different variants for, gosh, coming close to 100 years, another decade or so, and we're gonna reach 100 years, or 2 decades, I guess, but we're getting there. So forever, you know, and this is an iconic blade, but this is designed, again, as a fighting knife, a soldier knife, not as a survival knife, particularly in the concept that we're talking about today. And even people in the military, they are trained to survive in a different way. Building a fire would be almost certain capture and or death. So that's not something you're gonna be doing. Building a shelter is important, but less so than evasion and, you know, making and being able to catch maybe food and or laying traps for those maybe pursuing you. And so in that environment, you're not gonna be using a combat, and that's why they're usually termed that, or fighting knife, to split firewood and, you know, make shelters 99% of the time. And so this handle design is great for fighting and in a military role, but it is a stick tang, meaning that it's narrow, so it has this thickness, but then it tapers down, goes through a polymer handle with, we got a metal guard up front, we got a metal butt cap on the back. Oftentimes these will have leather stacking, different things like that. It has a pin back here on one side, there we go, it was on my side. And then you can see the back part of the tang. That doesn't mean it's not durable, but it definitely loses strength because the tang is smaller. And then with all these movement points, there's a lot that could go wrong. The blade could loosen up, fall out even, and then it's almost useless. And that is why, ideally, An exposed tang, meaning you can see it all the way through. It's about the same thickness usually as the rest of the blade in from edge to spine thickness. It doesn't taper extremely narrow or go into a rat tail tang, looking like a rat tail, things like that. And then you'll have bolts with handle scales of different material, from wood and micarta and G10. There's all kinds of material out there. This is going to be arguably the most durable. And if there is a failure, it'll usually just be in the screws loosening slightly that can either be torqued down, or in the worst case scenario, you can literally just take the handle scales off and you still have the full dimensions of the handle, just slightly less ergonomic, and you can still keep using the knife. And so this would be ideal. And even in this, there are some nuances. There is a skeletonized handle as well as what would be called a full tang, meaning there is literally only 3 holes drilled where your screws, or 2 holes, whatever it would be, to hold the scales on. That would be ultimately the strongest. Skeletonized, slightly less so. I've never seen any failures with my skeletonized handles, but that is something to consider when we are talking about a survival knife. But even in this concept, there are going to be 2 variants to consider. You have bolted on, torqued down, or Allen wrench, oftentimes, handle scales that you can remove, you can tighten, you can adjust if they ever loosen up. It's really easy to maintain. The downside is if you're out in the field and one of these do back off, even though again, you can just take it off and keep using the blade, if they do loosen up, which does happen sometimes because of shock and impact, you're kind of out of luck until you get back home. The flip side is you got pinned in handle scales like on this Joker here. Got everything that we're looking at in a midweight survival knife, but these pins are not adjustable. Now, the benefit is the likelihood of them loosening up is very slim, but if they do, you're out of luck and you have to go back to the manufacturer, and you're going to have a very difficult time getting all that worked out and hoping it's under warranty, or having to try and pound it in yourself. So what I would do is with either tool, whichever you prefer, because there are positives and negatives to each, is just pound on these before you go out and start actually using these. Use them in your backyard a bunch to see if any of these are loosening up, to make sure to tighten them down, maybe put some Loctite on them, or if any of your pinned in handle scale survival knives have any sort of shifting or issues with the handle scales, and hopefully they're nice and tight. Now let's talk blade steel, and I'm sure this is going to be a controversial point of the video. Stainless versus high carbon. Over here I have the Tops Longhorn in 1095 high carbon steel, and over here I have S35 VN steel, which is a stainless steel. And the statements I'm about to make are very generalized. These are just kind of 1,000-foot view to give you some ideas on the basic properties, pros and cons of a carbon versus a stainless steel survival knife, so you can determine which environment would be best suited for a particular type of steel and a particular type of knife. As a general rule, carbon steel blades are easier to resharpen and put razor fine edges on. It doesn't take much effort. You can easily do it out in the field, even with a smooth river stone sometimes, and definitely a basic ceramic rod will often do that, and generally are stronger than your stainless steel knives. The big limiting factor is because they are carbon based and don't have that chromium that stainless steel does. They are very prone to rust. So if you are in high humid environments, a lot of snowy conditions, maybe half the year, or coastlines, high carbon steel is just gonna take a lot of effort to fight off that rust. It's gonna have coatings on it that some people do or do not like, that sometimes can hinder cutting capability. And when damage occurs on carbon steel knives, it tends to be a chip, versus on stainless steel, it tends to be a roll. Chips tend to be more difficult to take out and reprofile the blade, versus a roll tends to be a little bit easier to fix when a roll occurs on a blade. Now, on the flip side, the benefit to having a stainless steel survival knife is the corrosion resistance is that main selling factor. You'll find a lot of Scandinavian made knives are made out of stainless steel because of the amount of snow and a lot of coastline that they have. You'll find dive knives and knives that are designed to be in water a lot, made out of stainless steel. So that's a major factor, as well as their resistance to chipping. So in theory, depending on how long you use your knife and how hard you use your knife, they may handle some of that abuse a little bit better than a carbon steel knife will. Obviously, depending on the type of steel, depending on the type of heat treats, all that type of stuff goes into those factors. The one downside that we often find with stainless steel is because of that extra chromium affecting the carbides, it is more difficult to get a razor sharp edge on a stainless steel knife. You're gonna have to put more energy into that. Sometimes they just don't seem to be as sharp as carbon because of the way the carbides interlace with each other, and therefore you have to spend more effort, more energy when they do dull to put that fine edge back on it. And so therefore there's no clear winner between carbons and stainless on what is better for a survival knife. It's really up to you, how you think you're gonna use your knife, your resharpening skills, and the environment that you're gonna be in, and the particular type of stainless, the particular type of high carbon will determine a lot of which one is better suited for you. So guys, that's just an overview of what survival knives are and giving you some good ideas and food for thought to think about the next time you're looking at purchasing and then deploying a survival knife into your daily rotation when you go into the outdoors. And so I appreciate you guys so much. I invite you to leave a comment below if you have any questions or other things that maybe I didn't hit on that you want help with. I'll do my very best to answer in the comment section below. I do invite you to check out the other video popping up and to subscribe if you haven't yet. And until next time, always remember, stay equipped, stay prepared, and I'll see you out there.